My son took my car keys right out of my hand in a grocery store parking lot, and spoke to me like I didn't get a say anymore. He said it was for my safety. Said I'd understand later. But the way he wouldn't look me in the eye, the way his voice stayed calm like everything was already decided, told me this wasn't about concern. It was about control. And standing there with people watching, I felt something shift, like I had just lost more than a set of keys, and I hadn't even realized what else was already gone. I stood beside my old Buick with a paper sack of canned soup and coffee creamer pressed against my hip, feeling smaller than I had felt in years. I am 76 years old, and I have lived in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, nearly my whole life. I buried my wife, Ellen, in that town. I raised my boy there. I worked 38 years at the tire plant and never once asked anybody to carry me. But that afternoon, my son Mark held my keys like they belonged to him. "Dad, don't make a scene," he said. That stung worse than the keys. I had not raised my voice. I had not cursed. I had only reached for what was mine. A woman loading groceries 2 cars over slowed down and watched us. Mark noticed her too. That was when he put his hand on my shoulder, gentle enough to look caring, firm enough to warn me. "I talked to Dr. Benson," he said. "You've been forgetting things." "I forgot one appointment," I said. He sighed like I was a child arguing bedtime. "It's more than that." I knew then he had been building a case against me in rooms where I was not invited. My doctor. My daughter-in-law. Maybe the bank, too, though I did not know that part yet. All I knew was that Mark had been visiting more in the past month, checking the mail before I saw it, asking where I kept my statements, offering to help simplify things. I had mistaken it for concern because that is what lonely fathers do. We dress up neglect when it finally knocks on the door. He drove me home in his SUV while my Buick stayed in the parking lot like an abandoned dog. The whole ride, he kept talking about responsibility and aging and how hard this was for him. For him. When we pulled into my driveway, he took my grocery sack from my lap before I could stop him. Inside, my kitchen looked wrong. A stack of envelopes sat on the table, opened already. I stared at them. Mark followed my eyes and went quiet. "What are those?" I asked. He set the groceries down slowly. And for the first time that day, my son looked scared. He didn't answer me right away. That was the first thing that made my stomach tighten. Mark had always been quick with words, sometimes too quick. But now he just stood there, hands on the back of one of my kitchen chairs, like he was deciding which version of the truth I deserved. "Just bills," he said finally. "Stuff you forgot to take care of." I stepped closer to the table. My name was printed on every envelope, but they'd already been opened, sorted into neat little piles. Utilities. Insurance. Bank statements. "I don't forget my bills," I said. He gave a small, tired smile. "Dad, you've been slipping." That word again. Slipping. Like I was something loose that needed tightening. I picked up one of the bank statements. The paper felt thinner than I remembered, or maybe my hands weren't as steady as I thought. I scanned the numbers, the withdrawals, the balances. Something didn't sit right. "This isn't right," I said. Mark straightened. "What do you mean?" "There's more gone than there should be." I tapped the page. "I don't spend like this." He walked over, too fast, and gently took the paper from my hand. "You've had a lot of little expenses. It adds up." "No," I said, firmer now. "I track my money. I had tracked it since Ellen passed. Every dollar. Every check. It was one of the few things that still gave me a sense of control, something no one could take from me. Until now." Mark rubbed his face like he was exhausted. "That's why I'm here, Dad. To help. You don't have to manage all this anymore. I wasn't aware I asked you to." That landed harder than I expected. His jaw tightened, and for a second I saw something underneath the calm: irritation, maybe even anger. "You didn't ask," he said. "Because you don't realize you need it." There it was. The line. The one that puts you on one side and them on the other. I looked around my own kitchen, the same chipped counter, the same clock Ellen picked out 20 years ago, ticking steady on the wall, and suddenly I felt like a guest in it. "What exactly have you been doing, Mark?" I asked quietly. He hesitated again. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded set of papers. "Just some authorization forms," he said. "Temporary. So I can help with your accounts." My chest went cold. "I didn't sign anything." "You don't have to yet," he said quickly. "But we should. Before something worse happens." "Worse than what?" He didn't answer that directly. He just placed the papers on the table, right next to the opened envelopes, like it all belonged together. "I've already talked to the bank," he added. That sentence hung in the air like something rotten. "You what?" I asked. "They're aware of the situation," he said carefully. "They flagged some unusual activity." I stared at him. "What activity?" This time, he didn't look away. "Large withdrawals," he said. "From your account." My throat went dry. "I didn't make any large withdrawals." Mark held my gaze, steady, controlled, like he had been waiting for me to say exactly that. "I know," he said. And that was the moment I realized, whatever was happening to my money, he already had an explanation ready. And I had a feeling I wasn't going to like where it pointed. I felt something shift in my chest, not panic, not yet, something slower, heavier. The kind of feeling you get when a door closes behind you and you didn't even hear it open. "What explanation?" I asked. Mark exhaled through his nose and pulled out one of the papers, flipping it toward me like he was presenting evidence. "Dad, the bank thinks you may have authorized recurring transfers and forgot about them." I stared at him. "That's not possible." "It happens," he said quickly. "Especially when—" "Don't," I cut in. "Don't finish that sentence." He paused, then nodded like he was being patient with me. That look again, like I was something fragile he had to handle carefully. I reached for another statement and forced myself to read it slower this time. Line by line. Date by date. There they were. Transfers. Not small ones either. Regular. Clean. Scheduled. Going out of my account every month. My heart started to pound. "Where is this going?" I asked. Mark didn't answer right away. He walked to the sink, turned on the faucet for a second like he needed something to do with his hands, then shut it off again. "It's being handled," he said. That wasn't an answer. Handled by who? Silence. I looked back down at the statement, then up at him. "Mark." He turned, finally meeting my eyes. And this time, there was no softness left in his face. "By me," he said. The room went still. I let that sit for a second, maybe two, waiting for him to correct it. To soften it. To explain it in a way that made sense. He didn't. "You've been taking money out of my account," I said slowly. "I've been managing it," he corrected. "That's not the same thing. It is when it's for your benefit." My hands curled into fists at my sides. I could feel heat rising in my face, not confusion anymore, anger. "You didn't ask me. You wouldn't have understood the situation." That did it. I took a step toward him. "Try me." He held his ground, but I could see the tension in his shoulders now. "You were falling behind," he said. "House maintenance, medical stuff, long-term care. I had to make decisions. So you just helped yourself to my money." "I invested it," he snapped, "just a little. Moved it where it could actually do something instead of sitting there." My stomach dropped. Where? Another pause. Longer this time. In some opportunities, he said. Real estate. A development project. I shook my head slowly. No, you don't get to say it like that. It's under control. How much? I asked. He didn't answer. How much, Mark? He looked away. That was all I needed. I turned back to the table, grabbed the stack of statements, flipping through them faster now, adding it up in my head the best I could. 10,000. 20. More. My breath got shallow. That's my retirement, I said. That's everything your mother and I saved. He stepped closer. And I'm trying to grow it. You're gambling it. It's not gambling. It is when it's not yours. The words hit harder than anything else I'd said. He flinched, just barely, but I saw it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he straightened up again, that calm tone slipping back into place like armor. You're overreacting, he said. This is exactly why I stepped in. I stared at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize my own son. You didn't step in, I said quietly. You took over. He opened his mouth to respond. But before he could, there was a sharp knock at the front door. Not polite. Not hesitant. Firm. Official. We both turned. Another knock followed, louder this time. Mark's face changed. Not anger. Not frustration. Fear. And that's when I realized. Whatever he'd done with my money. Someone else had just come to collect. The knock came again, slower this time, heavier, like whoever was out there knew we weren't moving fast enough. Mark didn't look at me. He just stared at the door like it might disappear if he ignored it. You expecting someone? I asked. No, he said quickly. Too quickly. I walked past him before he could stop me. My house, my door. I wasn't about to stand there like a guest waiting for permission. When I opened it, two men stood on the porch. One in a dark jacket, the other holding a clipboard. Neither of them smiled. Mr. Harold Bennett, the one with the clipboard asked. That's me. He nodded once. We're here regarding a financial matter tied to your property. I felt Mark behind me now. Close. Too close. There must be some mistake, Mark said, stepping forward. We're already handling that. The man didn't even look at him. Sir, he said to me, we've made multiple attempts to reach you about missed obligations connected to an investment account under your name. My chest tightened. I don't have any investment account, I said. Behind me, I heard Mark shift his weight. The second man finally spoke, voice flat. There are signed authorizations. I turned slowly, not toward them, but toward my son. Signed by who? I asked. Mark didn't answer. The man with the clipboard glanced down at his papers. Funds were leveraged against your primary residence. There are outstanding balances. If they're not resolved. Stop, I said. The word came out sharper than I expected, but my head was starting to ring. Leveraged how? I asked. He hesitated just a second, like he already knew I wasn't going to like the answer. A secured line of credit, he said. Your home was used as collateral. For a moment, everything went quiet. I heard the clock in the hallway ticking. I heard my own breathing. And somewhere behind all that, I heard Ellen's voice in my memory, laughing in this same house, standing in this same doorway. You put my house on the line. I said. Mark finally stepped forward. Dad, I was going to fix it. You used my house, I repeated. It was temporary. You signed my name. That stopped him. That one question, that one truth, hung between us like something that couldn't be taken back. I had authorization, he said, but his voice wasn't steady anymore. No, I said quietly. You had access. The difference landed. I could see it in his face. The man on the porch cleared his throat. Sir, we'll need to discuss repayment arrangements. Otherwise, the account will move into default proceedings. Default. That word didn't belong in my life. Not after everything I'd worked for. I stepped outside and pulled the door halfway closed behind me, shutting Mark inside, just enough so I didn't have to look at him. What happens if it defaults? I asked. The man didn't soften it. Not even a little. The property may be subject to seizure. I nodded once, slow. Give me a day, I said. He hesitated. Sir, we've already extended. Give me 1 day, I repeated. Something in my voice must have reached him, because he nodded. 1 day, he said. We'll return tomorrow. They turned and walked down the driveway without another word. I stood there a long time after they left, staring at the empty street, feeling something settle deep in my bones. Not confusion. Not fear. Clarity. I went back inside. Mark was standing exactly where I left him, like he hadn't dared move. You were going to fix it? I said. Yes. How? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. That was my answer. I walked past him into the kitchen, picked up the stack of papers, and held them in my hand for a moment. You didn't just take my money, I said. He didn't respond. You bet my life on something I didn't even know existed. I was trying to help, he said, but it sounded smaller now, weaker. I turned to him slowly. No, I said. You were trying to win. He shook his head. You don't understand how these things work. You're right, I said. Then I took a breath, long and steady. And tomorrow? I'm going to make sure I do. His eyes narrowed slightly. What does that mean? I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw not my son, but a man who had gone too far and didn't know how to come back. It means, I said quietly, you're not the one in control anymore. And that was when he finally looked afraid of me. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I sat at my kitchen table with every paper Mark had touched spread out in front of me, bank statements, authorization forms, numbers that didn't belong to me anymore. The house was quiet, but it wasn't the peaceful kind. It felt like something had already been taken, and the walls knew it before I did. Around 3 in the morning, I found it. Buried between transfer records and account summaries, a document I hadn't noticed before. Not because it was hidden, but because it didn't look like anything important at first glance. A digital authorization form. My name typed at the bottom. Not signed, typed. I stared at it for a long time. Then I stood up, walked to the drawer by the stove, and pulled out an old folder. My real documents. The ones I had signed over the years, mortgage papers, insurance, retirement accounts. I laid one of them next to the printed form. My signature, and whatever that was on Mark's document. They didn't match. Not even close. By sunrise, I wasn't confused anymore. I was certain. Mark didn't just move money. He forged me. When he came back into the kitchen around 6, he looked like he hadn't slept either. His eyes were red, his shirt wrinkled, like he'd been pacing all night trying to stay ahead of something that had already caught him. We need to talk, he said. We're past talking, I replied. He stopped. I slid the paper across the table toward him. What is that? I asked. He didn't pick it up. You know what it is. No, I said calmly. I want to hear you say it. His jaw tightened. It's authorization. It's fraud. That word landed hard. He flinched again, This time there was no hiding it. I had to do it that way, he said. You would have said no. Yes, I said. I would have. Silence filled the room, thick and final. I was going to fix everything before you ever found out, he said, voice low now. The market turned. It wasn't supposed to. There it is, I said. He looked up. You didn't lose it helping me, I said. You lost it trying to get more. His breathing got heavier. You don't understand the scale of it. Then explain it. That was the moment everything shifted. He sat down slowly, like his legs didn't quite trust him anymore. It's gone, he said. I didn't react. How much? I asked. He swallowed. All of it. The words didn't echo. They didn't explode. They just settled. Every dollar Ellen and I saved. Every year at the plant. Every quiet night balancing a checkbook while she watched TV in the next room. Gone. And the house? I asked. He hesitated. That's what I'm trying to protect, he said. No, I said softly. That's what you already risked. His hands shook now. If I can just buy time. You had time, I said. You had years. I can fix it, he insisted, but there was nothing behind it anymore. No plan. No control. Just desperation. I leaned back in my chair and looked at him, really looked. My son. The boy I taught how to ride a bike on this very street. The man who just told me he had taken everything. I'm calling the bank, I said. His head snapped up. No. I'm calling a lawyer. Dad, don't do that. I'm calling the police. That broke him. You can't do that, he shouted, louder than anything yet. The house went silent again after that. I didn't raise my voice. Yes, I said. I can. His face twisted, panic, anger, something ugly rising to the surface. If you do that, he said slowly, you're not just hurting me. I didn't answer. You're hurting Nora, he added. That name landed. My granddaughter. He saw it in my face, that hesitation, that one small crack. And he stepped right into it. She depends on me, he said. School, everything. If I go down, she goes down with me. There it was. Not apology. Not regret. Leverage. I felt something inside me go very still. You already used me, I said quietly. He didn't respond. And now you're using her. His eyes hardened. I'm trying to save this family. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. You're trying to save yourself. He leaned forward then, closer than he had all night, voice lower, sharper. If you make that call, he said, you better be ready for what comes after. And something in the way he said it, something cold and certain, made me realize. He wasn't done yet. I didn't answer him right away. I just sat there, listening to the refrigerator hum, the clock ticking down the hallway, the same sounds that had filled this house for decades. Only now they felt different, like they were counting down to something I couldn't stop. If you make that call, he had said. I looked at him across the table. My son. My only child. A man who had already taken everything from me, and was still trying to take more. You think I'm afraid of what comes after? I asked quietly. He didn't blink. You should be. There was no anger left in his voice now. Just calculation. Like he was laying out terms. I can still fix this, he added. But not if you start tearing everything apart. I nodded slowly, like I was considering it. That seemed to relax him, just a little. What does fixing it look like? I asked. He leaned back, exhaling. I need time. I've got another deal lined up. Bigger. Safer. I can recover most of it if you just. No, I said. The word cut clean through him. There is no next deal. His jaw tightened. You don't get it. I get it now, I said. That's the problem. I stood up from the table, and for the first time since this started, he looked smaller to me. Not like a child, like a man who had built something crooked and was watching it lean. I gave you my trust, I said. You turned it into leverage. I was trying to build something for us. You built it on a lie. He pushed his chair back hard enough that it scraped the floor. So what now? He snapped. You call the police. You watch them drag me out of here. I didn't answer. You think that fixes anything? He pressed. You think that gets your money back? No, I said. Then what's the point? I looked at him, long and steady. The point, I said, is that you don't get to decide how this ends. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I turned and walked down the hallway. Where are you going? He called after me. I didn't answer. I went into the small room off the living room, the one Ellen used to call my office, though it was really just a desk, a chair, and a phone I barely used anymore. My hand rested on the receiver for a moment. I could feel him behind me now, not close enough to touch, but close enough to be there. Dad, he said, quieter now. Think about Nora. I closed my eyes. I did think about her. Her laugh. Her letters. The way she still called me just to talk. Then I opened my eyes, and picked up the phone. Behind me, I heard his breath catch. Don't, he said. I started dialing. One number at a time. Slow. Deliberate. Dad, stop. I didn't. The line began to ring. Once. Twice. And just as someone picked up on the other end, I felt his hand close around my wrist.